most people who work in insurance know that they're motivated by helping people. We're also very pragmatic people. And we also know that people don't seek out insurance products like first and foremost. It's an unsought good. It's an expense that people sometimes, really have right to gripe over. It's costly. It's important.
Yeah.
But we also recognize that, it's definitely another bill to pay. So helping people is one motivation. Another is just kind of recognizing that it's the moment of truth.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another episode of The Insurance Experience. With me today is Eric Brandt. Eric, welcome.
Hi, Amrish. It's great to be with you today.
I want to start with just having you sort of share your background. You've got such a storied history and experience. Maybe if you can share with everyone who you are and what you've done.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I currently run my own consulting practice. I help data and technology service providers work with the insurance industry to use technology to solve problems for customers. But my background is primarily in insurance claims, both consumer and commercial, even some benefits. So I've been chief claim officer at a number of wonderful companies, which means that I got a chance to work with a bunch of great people. And I also brag about the fact that my very first job out of college was claim representative trainee back in 1991. So what's cool about that is I've got a chance to see kind of this flip from analog to more digital and more tech-enabled and hopefully more AI-driven capabilities that's happening right now. So cool to be with you. Thanks.
I always try to understand what got people into insurance. I personally have fallen in love with this industry. I think to me, what appeals to me is the rules-based nature of how insurance operates, right? Like it's a business that's based on rules and it's based on operations and procedures. And for a mind like mine, that appeals to me. But I'm curious from your perspective, going way back when you were starting off your career, what made you get into insurance?
So I was born and raised in Philadelphia, which is got a financial service center. Banking and insurance was really the only alternative to blue collar trades. And my family came from the trades. And that was really my destination for a period of time. And I thought, maybe if I get a job in financial services, someone will train me, which is no different than what happens when you join the trades.
Yeah.
So, that was my not too advanced, thought process. But I was the first in my family to go to college, and I was very fortunate to kind of get on that track. But quickly after getting into the industry, like many people who are drawn into it or drawn to stay there, one common thread for many of us, in my belief and opinion, is the opportunity to help people. And the reality is that insurance is a social tool that helps people, when they need it most. So damage to cars and homes or businesses or employees, people and property, that whole sphere, I think most people that stay in it find that motivation in the ability to be able to spread that risk, let people live their lives or run their businesses and get help when they need it. So that's the good part about insurance that I think attracts me and many more.
One of the things that I learned was I never truly developed empathy of the mindset of the customer. In this case, the insurance company's customer, before I just dealt with my own claims and my own accidents. And what's interesting is when you get into the industry, you're new, right? You're young. You probably don't have a lot of assets, right? So you may or may not have a car. You definitely may not have a home. And so what often ends up being interesting, and this was my personal experience, is for the first couple of years, you are doing your job and you are operating your job without having a lot of deep insight into what the customer is going to go through, especially in a claims organization. And suddenly these moments happen where, you get into an accident or something happens to your home or you lose something or you need to actually file a claim. And for me, this was a defining moment of understanding insurance is when I went through 3 independent incidents in 1 year. Just a bad luck.
No. None of them were your fault.
I think never my
That's
fault.
the assumption.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It was never my fault. But it dramatically changed my view on the job that's done and the importance of the job that's done and the empathy you need to have for the end customer.
Right.
So curious, was there ever one event, like one thing that just like that was a massive acceleration in your understanding of why what you do matters so much to your end customer?
That's a deep question, and I'll do my best to touch on it. But simply, just like I said earlier, most people who work in insurance know that they're motivated by helping people. We're also very pragmatic people. And we also know that people don't seek out insurance products like first and foremost. It's an unsought good. It's an expense that people sometimes, really have right to gripe over. It's costly. It's important.
Yeah.
But we also recognize that, it's definitely another bill to pay. So helping people is one motivation. Another is just kind of recognizing that it's the moment of truth. In the claim discipline in particular, it's probably a place where people, find that point of pride in being able to bring somebody back to, the way it used to be before they had that loss.
Yeah.
So those are all in the same sphere of motivation. I will tell you that a lot of claim people will tell stories about galvanizing times around catastrophe claim handling. And catastrophe claim handling oftentimes spills out of the claim department into service operations and to product pricing underwriting. Like the whole industry feels it because the whole community feels it. I actually lived in the greater New Orleans area when Hurricane Katrina rolled through and over, over the area that me and the team served and over my house. And we didn't lose our house. We took some damage, but the reality is like, that's a real tangible, emotional, charged event.
Yeah.
And virtually everyone, I lived on the West Coast in Northern California when there were fires rolling through. And, that is a different kind, of stress and reality. I felt an earthquake, hunkered in the basement, when a tornado was rolling through. I feel like I've been at or near, many. As a matter of fact, many years ago, I was a first line responder for Hurricane Andrew, which landed famously in the early 90s in Homestead, Florida. So I recall standing on a wiped out concrete slab that used to be someone's home with a physical check to give to a customer.
Oh, wow.
And help them start to get back on their feet. So the whole thing hangs together. I think for me and many of us in this industry, but if I did have to go back to one really galvanizing moment, it would be as a catastrophe claim adjuster on the ground in Florida following Hurricane Andrew. And then from there, there's just countless experiences of, being motivated to work with great people and solve problems for customers.
That's fantastic. It's so interesting. One of the things that the sort of insurtech companies often talk about is this idea of file a claim and get paid in 30 seconds, right? And I think what they're trying to achieve is that magic moment when you're at the doorstep and you've got a check for the person, and that the idea of getting a check, right, from your insurance company is such a, honestly, it's a magical moment, right? A moment that was in your world. And I think the more sort of, fast forward way of trying to achieve that magical moment is the 30-second claim experience, which, file a claim, we'll take a picture, we'll figure out the damage, and here's your check in 30 seconds. Obviously, there's a lot to it that needs to happen to make it work. And, in certain cases, it does not work. I'm curious from your perspective, and this is where I want to sort of start the thread of understanding
Right.
how things have evolved in the world of claims. And so if you were to look back and look, back from where you started, where to you then eventually leading an organization, one of the most foundational, insurance companies in our country, what's changed versus what's remained the same?
Well, I'll start with what's remained the same. What's remained the same is serving customers has remained the same. So any company that is not listening to customers or is not properly serving customers is probably not long, for their position in the market. Whereas those companies that are truly, customer centric, customer obsessed, as many would say, or customer led, I think is probably a better way of putting it. Those are the companies that probably have long-term sustainability. We'll get into that positive flywheel of profitable growth. And customer centricity is not just service with a smile.
Yeah.
Customer centricity in the insurance industry is often coming down to two macro elements: price and service. Price meaning every customer has a bill, and that bill has to kind of meet with their expectations for the value that they perceive they're getting. Some customers are willing to pay more, some require paying less. There's a whole variety of kind of customer kind of touch points and customer perceptions around fairness of price. But price gets you in that conversation. If you don't have the right price, you're not in the conversation. But the second fast follow is, does a service experience match the price that I'm paying? That come in the form of the way you make me feel or the ease of doing business. And when you get into the claim, arena, I'll share that having been chief customer advocate and obviously surveying tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of customers over my career, the sum of all customer feedback tends to land broadly in, it was easier than I expected. It was faster than I expected. And the communication was right for me when the customer has a good experience. That's the sum of all, kind of promoter style, surveys. The sum of all detractor style surveys goes something like this: it was harder than I thought. It took longer than I thought. And I didn't understand what was happening. Now, and people oftentimes equate it to the payout. And of course, you have to pay what you owe. But all customers are not the same. And, customers will tell you. And at that point, that's a very simple 10,000 foot, example. Now, what you have to do at that point is understand, how do you meet that customer's expectations with communication, cycle time, real and perceived fairness, all those things that kind of add up to what the customer wants and needs. So these, like, I'll pay you in 30-second, kind of snippets, tend to get a lot of airtime, but not all customers want to get paid in 30 seconds. Some customers would rather be paid the right amount with the right communication and the right level of understanding. And a day might just be fine, or 2 days might be fine, or don't pay them at all. Many customers don't know what to do with the check. It's one more problem for them to solve. They actually need to be matched up with a contractor or a repair facility or a medical provider or some other professional. So, it just goes to show that customers, perceptions and customers' needs are, ever changing, and they're never getting easier. I'll share that for an example. And the work of the frontline people who are serving customers is getting more challenging and more demanding every day. They have to have more information front of mind. They have to have more ability to be able to serve in the moment and kind of meet that customer's expectations. So that's not getting any easier for our frontline people either, but they're stepping up to the challenge, even though it's getting increasingly charged and difficult from time to time.
The thing that really resonates with me is the idea of the perception of fairness, and how that perception of fairness, quality of service, is so much more important than speed. Because, in sort of the world we live in, the consumers' expectations and a lot of the things that they operate in is often about speed. In every industry sort of we operating in, like, oh, I want to go to a bank, I want my money right now. I'm not going to do like, I'm going to put in a request for a check, and I'm going to get, my money from the bank that belongs to me in 3 days. That's impossible, right? Like, that would just, create a riot. But in insurance, the perception of fairness and quality of service is so much more higher than the idea that I want to get paid instantly, or I want to get it resolved instantly. And within that perception of fairness and service is the idea that I want to just know what's happening, right? Knowledge. And that's interesting, and that hasn't changed, right? Like, it was exactly that, those fundamental principles 20 years back, and that has remained the same now. What's changed within the claims organization. Here you have the claims organization services the customer. The customer has some basic principles that they care about, and as a result, the the claims organization is servicing those. And you touched a little bit on how the job has gotten harder. But inside the building, what's happening? What's happening from the minds of the claims adjuster, frontline staff, the management, and everywhere in the middle. How has
Yeah.
that organization evolved?
My perspective is everything has changed. Of course, I've had a long runway, but I will share that everything has changed and everything will continue to change. I like to use some extreme examples to illustrate the point. So you have some companies that believe deeply in the human touch and this analog experience that customers need to have that one-on-one experience. And that's true. There are problems with scalability there. There are problems with, kind of different customers have different needs. And there's problems with service delivery if you're over indexed towards a pure play, human, kind of facilitated department. You know where I'm going to go next.
Yeah.
The other side of the equation is there are people that believe deeply that this entire claim orchestration will be completely digitized. AI is taking it over. All we need is just, an army of bots and supercomputers, and it's already been solved. I think smart people recognize that the answer lies in between, but also where in between. So the number one, I think, issue that I believe frontline people, middle managers, senior leaders are grappling with is how do we deploy people and technology in concert with one another to solve those problems? And of course, there are some problems that can, should, and do get solved purely with technology today. The 30-second example, you upload a receipt, you pass, the test with regard to fraud flags, and you get paid. Of course, but we all know that those kind of claims are not the kind of claims that people are tangling with right now.
Yeah.
Even in personal auto claims, which tends to be the base example for a lot of these conversations, so we'll go to personal auto, even though it's broader, people kind of overestimate the simplicity of the last mile problem that exists in personal lines claims, which is that pesky other car. The policyholder has paid for coverage for their vehicle regardless of fault. That's not the hard part of the claim. That's not the hard part of the claim. The hard part of the claim is the other person and the other vehicle and other potential people and fault and legal and regulatory requirements. So many of this has been solved either through straight through claim processing, really smart business rules, intelligent technology. But what's left is the part that is really hard.
Yeah.
Is there fraud or not? Is there an injury or not? Will that injury give rise to a lawsuit or not? So these are the things that companies are grappling with. And that's where I think AI is coming into play right now. And it's coming in my view, primarily through a kind of scanning, scoring, risk management, next best step in the process, or kind of risk scoring type use case. But there's a whole lot more work at play. I do believe that our frontline staff will benefit greatly from having real-time access to layered leverage, which helps them kind of see things they wouldn't otherwise see, or manage, kind of a portfolio of work that might not be reasonable, but for the technology. And that's where I think the future is headed.
Say a little bit more about layered leverage, right? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, so my simple view of layered leverage is, again, using kind of extremes as an example, taking a one-to-one relationship, one customer, one claim professional. And of course, that's not how the current operation works. You've got multiple customers, multiple claims, and multiple individuals. But then that issue of scalability kind of comes in. The math won't support, one person handling 50 claims or 100 claims or 500 claims or 1,000 claims. It breaks down at some point. Whereas layered leverage, I'll use a workers' compensation example as one. We kind of break away from personal auto. If you have a claim professional who's responsible for a portfolio of what they call lost time claims, you've got employees who are injured on the job and they're not able to go to work and they're losing time, so they're drawing benefits. There are a number of those lost time claims for reasons that are not immediately apparent to the claim professional, may be destined for a poor medical outcome. So layered leverage would be able to continuously scan, monitor, risk score, and then identify matters which could be candidates for some other kind of claim handling, which would put them on a path to a better medical outcome. So using finance parlance, everyone's getting beta. Unless, of course, you do something differently. You actively manage that portfolio, and then you can get a different result they call alpha. So the difference between getting what everyone is getting with a broad-based kind of analog approach and getting a better and different outcome for our customers is activating some sort of system and method, which puts this matter on a path for a better outcome. It doesn't matter if it's a faster car repair or someone who recovers from a work accident or a slip and fall that could have been a nuclear verdict, but now is a kind of moderately priced, fairly negotiated settlement. It's all kind of somewhat similar when it comes to what are you going to do differently to prevent this potentially risky matter to come back into line and be less risky.
So this is a fascinating concept, right? So I love the way you represented this, right? Everybody is getting beta. And if you do something, you have to do something that will get you alpha, right? And you have to think about as a leader in the claims organization, what can we do differently that will allow us to get to a different outcome? And it seems like those are the things that you really need to be doubling down on, because that's where the big sort of major leap improvements come in. I want to go back to this layered leverage a little bit more. This is a fascinating concept because it sort of ties into this fascination that everybody has with AI. And I'm gonna share a fascination that I hear a lot and get your feedback on this fascination. So the fascination is the following. Hey, we are a massive claims organization. We have so much prior data in our company of claims coming in, adjudication happening, decision being made, and claims being paid out. And wouldn't it be really nice for us to create a brain of all of these claims adjudications and have AI initially maybe give help, guidance, red circle out the areas in a claim that comes in that, you should really be looking at that, right? Like it's not a regulatory thing because again, AI is not making the final decision, which is, sort of very loaded as a topic because of how, regulations work, but at least it's giving advice and guidance. The same way that if today if somebody gets an X-ray or an MRI scan, the machine does like a little bit of guidance, but it's the radiologist making the decision eventually. So I love this fascination. I think the concept is amazing. The more established insurance companies have higher layered leverage potentially because they have more data, and more data means more ability. How real is that fantasy versus not plausible? And if it is real, what is the path to get there?
You touched on a number of realities that I want to kind of bring to the forefront. First is insurance is a regulated industry, and there are requirements right now for decision making and the fair use of AI. There is an executive order from the White House. There's an NAIC bulletin on the safe and proper use of AI. So I think first and foremost, it's caused us as an industry to become more educated in what AI is and is not, and also fit that into the reality of the legal and regulatory landscape that we exist in. So I'm going to front run that because it's a reality that, these are the rules of play, whether we like the rules of play or not, they are the rules of play. So we're on that field.
Absolutely.
The second thing I would say is everything that you pointed out, in my mind, it may or may not be your intent, but what came forward for me was people are still going to be required to engage at times and in ways which will need to demonstrate skill and caring. So if you have a matter that gets a red circle, I think as you put it, or some sort of highlight or flag, a skilled and caring expert's going to have to engage in a way which is effective, and that's not going away anytime soon. Many people call it classic blocking and tackling. I just call it, the discipline of insurance requires, skill and expertise. And it takes time to learn that and practice it and execute on that, particularly in matters that are more risky and costly, for customers and companies. That is here for the foreseeable future. There's a whole bunch of, examples and use cases that can prove that comment wrong, like a cracked windshield or an auto adjudicated, kind of medical bill. I mean, there are a lot of automatically kind of rules driven claims that flow in large numbers, counts in dollars. But when you think about kind of US P&C broadly, kind of personal auto, commercial auto, general liability, certainly niche specialty casualty, workers' compensation, that whole, kind of sphere of insurance products that kind of dominate the US marketplace, it goes back to my original thesis, which is how will leaders deploy people and technology? We have a few well-placed bets that we can make. And you can try to boil the ocean and solve everything. I would submit that you probably will fall behind. Or you can wait on the sideline and be an adopter like late in the process. You will probably fall behind there. The winners will probably be the ones that are able to approach the problem with some level of design thinking, start with the end in mind, and then work backwards. And that might be, what is the right price for the customer? What is the right service experience for the customer? And then what is the right claim experience for the customer? Kind of breaking that down into its parts, pieces, and then working backwards off of those most high leverage deliverables. And that kind of also brings me full circle again. This industry will ultimately be one of price and service. It's not one of brand. Exclusively on brand will not get you there. Brand and marketing will probably help you tread water. But pricing sophistication and pricing superiority is where I think the majority of the winners will emerge.
That's fascinating. So, the idea that it is and always will be about price and service, that seems to be the consensus, right? Like, I think that is one of those interesting industries where no matter how much innovation happens, the core fundamentals don't change. And that's a good thing, right? Because you're able to, again, going back to a rules-based environment, you're able to keep two constants and move a lot of the other things around to get there, right? Like, for example, you can deploy technology to find a cheaper operating model. As long as you're able to keep service high, you can drop price now, right? So now you're finding some competitive advantage because you found a way to use technology to do that. Or you may have just a phenomenal way to underwrite risk, and that may be you've hired one amazing underwriter who just has the gift of God to underwrite every risk perfectly. And now you don't need technology anymore because you have the perfect price for every single person, and you can couple that up with service. Or you have just a phenomenal service organization, and that keeps everything. It keeps the right optimal operating capacity. Within this world, imagine you are giving advice to a new chief claims officer. They're joining a new company. They have a magic wand, and they can make any change they want to build the most well-oiled claims organization, the most well-oiled claims machine. What are the top 3 pieces of very tactical advice that you would give? This is a very unfair question, by the way. The top 3 sort of very tactical advice you would give, which is like, here are the 3 cards that you must play, my friend, to make your company massively successful. And this is like, imagine you're an LLM and you are presenting, a bullet point top 3 list to your, to your friend who's the new chief claims officer. What would you print out or send back to your friend as the top 3 most tactical pieces of advice?
That is an unfair question. I'm going to take your unfair question and I'm going to cheat, with my answer. How's that?
I like it.
All right, so I know that you are like massively, kind of superior in your thinking about technology, right? So you're a technologist, a futurist. I get that. So my first answer will be access to amazing people. Full stop. And don't confuse access to amazing people, with a pure play analog company. Access to amazing people means people who will build market leading technology or collaborate or solve problems. But unless you have the access to the best people, you won't win this, you won't win this competitive game. So I'm talking about problem solvers and builders, and just people that are willing to go at it every day in ways that are different and better than the competition. And believe me, when you have a great culture, don't take it for granted, because if you see a bad culture, it is really difficult to work your way out of that. So don't take people and the culture you create for granted. That's first. Second is, does your technology enable the right process? So tech-enabled process would be the second thing that you need. Some would argue that you need the best, brightest, whiz bang, most expensive, kind of platform going. No, I've seen really great companies do tremendously well by getting the most out of their existing technology and then being really thoughtful about configuration and upgrades and so on. So just, be wary of kind of big bang kind of tech replacements that take multiple years and it's got a hockey stick at the end of its, kind of CBA. So, the technology has to enable the process that you want your customers to experience. And the third, I would say, which is not nearly as romantic as people in tech, would be the condition of your data. I do believe that, things like data stewardship or data definitions or data integrity, that doesn't sound like it's like a great hot topic. I will say that the better the condition of your data, the more accessible some of your technology aspirations will be. And this is a legacy industry. We've got a lot of companies that are working on decades old platforms. And if you're a good steward of the data, that means you can have better KPIs, you can have better measures and metrics that matter. You can have probably better ability to be able to model from that data. There's a lot of services and companies that will help sort that out for you and do some translation and mapping. That's an extra step and cost and expense and more time. So to the extent that you've got decent data, I think that you'll be able to unlock some of that technology aspiration. But I'll go back to people. If you're hiring great people, then you'll be able to tackle all those problems.
So I think that's a great, mutually exclusive yet collectively exhaustive election of advice, right? Like hire great people, make sure that you're not spending 7 years doing one massive systems redesign to then emerge out of 7 years and come with something that's 7 years old now.
Right.
And think about your data and your data stewardship from the start. Because that is where you will be able to use that to leverage all of the other initiatives that you want to do. I think those three pieces of advice are super powerful. I want to end on this high note. This is awesome. I think I learned a lot through the course of this. My last question I ask everybody is that if we want to follow you, if you want to hear from you, if you want to see your thoughts and read about your thoughts, or just follow you along on the internet, where do we go?
LinkedIn is a powerful platform. It's a great way for me to keep in touch with colleagues, for many, many years. So I have not been posting as much as I should be, but I'll post on subjects and topics that I think are important to the industry or kind of trending at the moment. It's a great way to message each other and to also keep connected. So that's my number one. I'm at conferences from time to time, InsurTech Connect, recently, Connected Claims. I'll be attending a seminar with our friends at CLM, so I try to keep connected, to the industry through those touch points. But yeah, reach out and would love to hear from you.
Eric, thank you for being on the show.
My pleasure.